This event is put on for our Hunger Advocacy Network members and partners, facilitated by the San Diego Hunger Coalition. The Hunger Advocacy Network is a collaborative of 19 health, housing, and social services agencies working together to influence and advance state and federal policies to end hunger. While we strive to meet the needs of today, ending hunger in San Diego County can only be accomplished by large-scale systems change. Together, we make lasting change, improving food assistance and addressing root causes of hunger to create a hunger-free San Diego. We're very excited to be joined by such a great community of hunger relief advocates. Today is an opportunity to take a look at hunger throughout the life cycle with a particular focus to build food security in our region during COVID and beyond. Next, I'd like to introduce Anaid Braki, CEO of the San Diego Hunger Coalition.
Thank you so much, Vivian, and thank you so much to the Hunger Advocacy Network for their tremendous work, for your partnership and leadership. And I'm delighted to join you all today. Thank you very much to all of the elected officials, representatives who are here today, and very much to our panel of very knowledgeable and esteemed colleagues. Next slide, please. So I'm going to just briefly tell you a couple of things about the Hunger Coalition and then give you an introduction to food insecurity in San Diego County with some current data on how we're looking a year into the pandemic. So the mission of the San Diego Hunger Coalition is to lead coordinated action to end hunger, supported by research, education, and advocacy. Next slide. The Hunger Coalition focuses very intently upon federal nutrition programs and the interweaving of those programs with all other types of food assistance, because that is what it's going to take to end hunger in our region, is a nicely interwoven safety net where we're combining and making them all very easy for people to access. So we focus on CalFresh and we facilitate the CalFresh task force. We focus on school meals and other youth programs that are child federal nutrition programs like after school meals and summer meals. And we facilitate the Hunger Free Kids task force. You're being introduced to the Hunger Advocacy Network today. If you're not familiar with this group, this is the group that we facilitate around public policy and advocacy. And then we have our Hunger Free San Diego initiative, which is about collaborative research and planning to make sure that everyone in San Diego County has enough to eat. And through that process and our research, which we'll be sharing with you in subsequent slides here, is guided by about 30 different leaders from different seats across the entire food assistance landscape. Next slide. So I want to start by explaining what we mean by nutrition insecurity. So the Hunger Coalition and the Hunger Free San Diego Advisory Board decided that our goal is not just enough calories, but we want to ensure that every San Diegan has access to enough nutritious food. Therefore, we are using as an important indicator of the cost of a healthy meal and how much it would weigh, we are using the USDA meal plans. My slide, there we go, thank you. So the USDA creates different meal plans where they calculate how much money would be needed to purchase healthy food, how much would it weigh, and they have different levels. You've probably been hearing about the thrifty meal plan not being quite enough for people to be able to get enough nutrition, and that's what the SNAP or CalFresh benefits are currently based on. So there's a lot of conversations right now about whether or not the thrifty meal plan is adequate for a SNAP benefits to be based on. Well, we know in San Diego that it's not adequate. We live in a particularly expensive community. So our leaders that we work with from all of our partner organizations and the Hunger Coalition have set this as the standard. So we are striving toward nutrition security. And you're going to hear about the impacts of not having enough nutrition from our speakers as they talk about the populations that they specialize in. currently, as of November 2020, we are looking at about 1 in 3 people not having consistent access to enough nutritious food. For children, it's even more extreme. 2 in 5 kids not always able to get enough healthy food. And for seniors, it's a little less than 1 in 3. This is an increase from 2019. We had been seeing, since the Great Recession, we saw a very slow recovery, but it was really starting to recover, and food insecurity and nutrition insecurity were finally starting to drop, and then COVID hit. Next slide, please. So currently about a little over 1 million people. One of the things that we wanted to share with you and to point out is that while we did see an increase in the number of people, probably the most devastating was the additional pressure and additional trauma to households who were already somewhat food insecure. So we are talking about low-income workers who were likely working in those industries hardest hit by the pandemic, who lost their jobs or hours. And then we're also talking about the informal economy in San Diego, people who are paid perhaps not under the table, or housekeepers, people who are selling food with the carts and things like that. And so those incomes were also lost, which we don't see as much when we're looking at census data on income or unemployment. Next slide. So this year, the Hunger Free San Diego initiative has been able to provide our data on a zip code level. So this is a snapshot of the number of number of nutrition insecure people in San Diego County by zip. So these are not rates. These are numbers of people. So, which, as can be challenging when we're talking about areas with less density and less population density. So it doesn't mean that people in the El Cajon area or Otay area are suffering more than the people in Borrego Springs. It just means that there are more of them. Next slide. We like to provide also these maps with a version that lets you look at city boundaries as opposed to zip code boundaries. So when you're trying to, this becomes less helpful when you're looking at San Diego. Obviously, it's such a, so many disparate areas, so different across its zip codes. But when you're looking at an area like Escondido or Chula Vista, this view, you don't have to add up all the zips that fall into that region. So, but for the more accurate data, we recommend you looking at zip code level maps. Next slide. So in addition to assessing the current levels of need, we then look at where is food assistance currently going. So our partners who are part of Hunger Free San Diego share their data with us about their food distribution efforts. So we capture all of that data, all of the output in its various forms. For example, CalFresh is dollars. So we take that $3.25 for a healthy meal, or $4.20 something cents if you're in the rural area. And that's how we convert CalFresh benefits or WIC benefits into numbers of meals. We take pounds from the food banks and all of their hardworking pantry partners throughout the county, and we convert the number of pounds to meals using a 1.84 pounds equals 1 meal. Again, that's from the USDA moderate cost food plan. So now we see that, I see that one of our speakers is going to be speaking in a few minutes, so I'm going to hustle through these slides, but I've given you the base understanding so we can go a little quicker. So all food assistance is represented here. This is where we're seeing, large amounts of it going. Next slide. So here's what it looks like as a pie chart to give you some information on the relative quantities by food assistance program. So as you can see, also these are these are sized differently. So pre-COVID in January, you can see this is what our hunger relief system looked like before COVID hit. Biggest sources of meals came from CalFresh or SNAP. Then next would be school and youth meals, then food distributions, and WIC and senior meals. I think it's very helpful. It's often surprising for people to see the relative size of meals coming from these different programs. And obviously we've seen a huge boost in the output of all programs through COVID. Next slide. This slide shows you a little bit about what happened with each program during the COVID, during the past year. So we saw, thanks to government action at the federal level with emergency allotments for SNAP and interview waivers and other things that made it easier than ever to access the SNAP or CalFresh program, we saw a huge boost in the number of meals coming from CalFresh. School meals, on the other hand, dropped, as you would imagine, with schools closed because of the pandemic. Food distribution, this is a heroic effort by organizations and volunteers countywide, has more than doubled, almost tripled. Next slide. So what I'm going to show you after this are maps of the meal gap. Just wanted to explain quickly how we calculate that. Total meals needed, 3 meals a day, minus self-purchased. So the meals needed by food assistance, how many are we providing? What is the gap? We're looking at a gap of over 12 million meals per month. Next slide. The nutrition insecurity, as you can imagine, and as I'm sure you all know, has disproportionate impacts on the BIPOC communities. Next slide. And then here's a map of the meal gap. So this lets you see how we're doing as a community in terms of meeting the need. And it helps us to dive in and look at, we could look at Lakeside. Okay, how many school meals, what's the school meal participation? What's the CalFresh participation? How many food distributions? It allows the Hunger Free San Diego Advisory Group and providers countywide to be more informed and to use data to drive their decisions about their efforts and resources. Next slide. Here's a quick view of it at the city level. And then finally, I just want to invite all of our, next slide, please, our participants today to, if you'd like to learn more about what you're going to hear about today, I invite you and recommend that you participate in our Hunger Free Agency Navigator training. It's on our website, and we've got resources and flyers, and we think this is a great way to weave together everything that all of us are doing. So with that, I will turn it back over to our Public Affairs Manager, Mauricio, to introduce the Congressman.
Thank you, Anahid. We're so honored to have 2 keynote speakers today. I'd first like to introduce Congressman Mike Levin. Congressman Levin represents the 49th Congressional District. During his time in Congress, Congressman Levin has had incredibly supportive efforts to reduce food insecurity in our community. A particular concern to the Congressman is reducing food insecurity among military service members, veterans, and their families. Last Congress, he introduced the Military Dependent School Meal Eligibility Act to connect the children of active duty service members with free and reduced price school meal lunches. He also co-sponsored the Expanding Access to School Meals Act, the Schools Preventing Hunger and At-Risk Kids Act, and other legislation to work toward eliminating food insecurity and childhood hunger. Congressman Levin is currently collaborating with Senator Murray to permanently authorize a summer EBT program through the Stop Child Hunger Act of 2021. He's working to include this bill in the Child Nutrition Reauthorization Package this year. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Levin.
Well, thank you so much, Mauricio, for that kind introduction. And thank you to everybody at the San Diego Hunger Coalition and the Hunger Advocacy Network for hosting this important discussion and inviting me to speak with you all and also for your flexibility this morning. We have a hearing going on right now. So I've got two computers. I've got the hearing on the other computer. They're about to mark up a bill that I'm doing on protecting our public lands, which is another area of great interest of mine. But I want to thank you all again for all your leadership. We know that approximately 1/3 of San Diegans are experiencing some sort of nutrition insecurity. That's up from about 1 in 4 in 2019. Furthermore, over 1 million people in San Diego County experienced nutrition insecurity in November 2020 and required some form of assistance just to have 3 nutritious meals per day. Of this nutrition insecure population, about 28% were nutrition insecure for the first time in 2020. Well, 72% were already nutrition insecure before the COVID-19 pandemic. As the numbers clearly tell us, food insecurity is not new to our communities, but unfortunately, the COVID-19 pandemic has made things worse. It continues to increasingly exacerbate food insecurity both in San Diego and across the United States. And the issue affects our veterans, our military families. That is something that I take personally and seriously as the vice chair of the House Veterans Affairs Committee and as the chair of the Veterans Affairs Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity, which has jurisdiction over things like veterans housing and homelessness and workforce development, transition assistance. So anytime that I see a veteran in need, particularly a veteran in need of food, I think it's a clarion call for us all to do better and to try to serve those who have served our country so well. In May 2020, a survey of active duty service members found that nearly 40% needed food and nutrition assistance for themselves or for their families. And that's why I introduced something called the Military Dependents School Meal Eligibility Act. Many food insecure military families are ineligible for federal food assistance because under current law, the service member's housing allowance is counted as income. This inflates incomes on paper, disqualifying service members in need from receiving federal food assistance and their children from receiving free or reduced school meals. Additional barriers to enrollment in federal food assistance programs include high relocation rates, as military families move on average every 2 to 3 years, as well as administrative burdens like paperwork. As a result, food insecure military families rely on assistance from charitable food pantries that operate on or near military bases across the country. So what would my bill do? Well, it would authorize the U.S. Department of Defense to send information from its personnel and pay system to the state agencies that oversee school meal programs to directly certify child dependents of eligible active duty military members in school meal programs. Under this bill, state agencies would automatically enroll child dependents of active military families who make up to 185% of the federal poverty line in the free and reduced lunch program and notify relevant local education agencies to add them to their approved student list. Ensuring children of low-income service members have access to school meals will help reduce hunger in military families, and importantly, it'll reduce stress on our soldiers. And this in turn would benefit our country's military readiness while improving health and academic outcomes for our military children. By allowing the DoD to work with state agencies to directly certify the children of our military service members, we can ensure that we take care of the families of those who are fighting for our country each and every day. The men and women who are risking their lives in service of our country should never struggle to feed their children, ever. And of all the sacrifices they're making, putting food on the table should never be one of them. So as you can hear, expanding nutrition assistance for those in need is particularly important to, I think, hopefully to all of us in Congress, but certainly it is to me. And I'm going to keep doing everything I can to make sure that families in our district and our region are not going hungry. And that includes providing more federal relief to organizations like the San Diego Food Bank so they can continue to serve our communities. I'm pleased to announce that in the coming weeks, as Mauricio teed up nicely, I'll be introducing the Stop Child Hunger Act with Senator Patty Murray. This legislation would reduce food insecurity during the summer school break for families who qualify for the free and reduced lunch program. Specifically, the bill would authorize the USDA to provide low-income families with a summer EBT card with $150 to purchase food at Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program or SNAP approved retailers. There's still so much that must be done, but I'm excited to be working with Senator Murray, and with the passage of this American Rescue Plan, which you probably heard a lot about, we were able to secure significant additional funding for nutrition assistance. Just a few points to highlight. SNAP benefits increased by 15%, and President Biden has called on this increase to be extended through September of 2021. $400 million in the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which supplements diets of low-income Americans by providing them with emergency food assistance at no cost. $13 million directly to the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which works to improve the health of low-income people at least 60 years of age by supplementing their diets with nutritious USDA foods. The American Rescue Plan also provides direct housing and nutrition assistance to families who are struggling to get by expanding access to safe and reliable childcare and affordable health care, and also by extending and expanding unemployment insurance so that American workers can pay their bills and give families with children as well as childless workers a boost through enhanced tax credits. And I'm really excited to see a lot of the tax credits in the American Rescue Plan tonight. As part of President Biden's speech, he'll be talking about the American Families Plan and the American Jobs Plan. And as part of the American Families Plan, I expect to hear a lot more great news for everyone on this Zoom, that a lot of these programs will be expanded beyond just the COVID pandemic period. I was also very glad to see that President Biden signed an executive order directing FEMA to cover 100% of the cost to states and local governments so they can partner with restaurants and nonprofits to prepare meals for food banks to distribute. And I'll just close with this. While we continue to work through this pandemic to get people back on their feet, I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for the critical services and advocacy that the San Diego Hunger Coalition has provided for our communities, continues to provide for our communities, and will provide in the future. And I look forward to seeing you all in person. It'll be wonderful to see you all in person in 3 dimensions very soon. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. Please get vaccinated if you haven't done so. And thank you again for all your fantastic work. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Congressman Levin. I know you have a busy schedule, so we were happy that you were able to accommodate us. We truly appreciate your time and all that you're doing on a daily basis. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual. Take care, everybody.
Congresswoman Jacobs is a third-generation San Diegan and proudly represents the 53rd Congressional District. Congresswoman Jacobs served as the founding chair of San Diego for Every Child, the coalition to end child poverty, and previously served as a scholar in residence at the Joan B. Kroc School of Peace Studies at the University of San Diego, and in policy positions at the U.S. State Department, UNICEF, the United Nations, and on Secretary Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. She also served as the founding CEO of Project Connect, an education nonprofit dedicated to closing the opportunity gap for students around the world. At 31, Congresswoman Jacobs is the youngest member of California's delegation and the third youngest member in the 117th Congress. She serves as a freshman representative to the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee and sits on the House Committee on Foreign Affairs and House Armed Services Committee. Please welcome Congresswoman Sara Jacobs.
Well, thank you so much, Mauricio. And first of all, I'm impressed because you guys are the first event I've ever been on that's running ahead of time. So good job, moderators. And thanks to all of you and the Hunger Coalition and Advocacy Network for putting this forum together and for all the work that you do to make a difference in our communities. I know I met with some of you in March and look forward to working as a partner to address food insecurity and hunger in San Diego and across our region. And it's an honor for me to join my friend Congressman Levin in being with you today. Before we get into the policy stuff, I just want to say that this has been a long and difficult year for so many of our neighbors. And I know that so many of you have worked tirelessly to help people. And I'm so thankful to all of you for everything you did, especially the way you quickly retooled your services during the pandemic. When the people in San Diego needed it most, you were there. And I know it wasn't easy and it took a toll. You went above and beyond, and people here are going to remember that for a very long time. And I'm so grateful for everything that you've done for our community. And I hope that you now are getting some rest. So you all know that I've been long working on addressing childhood poverty, and I'm grateful to so many of you who have helped partner in that effort. As one of the youngest members of Congress, I believe this is the time for us to offer big and bold solutions. The pandemic laid bare fault lines and failures in the way things were. But even before COVID-19, about 40% of San Diego's kids were living in families experiencing poverty, and we know that's only gotten worse. It's not enough to go back to how things were done before. People are demanding real change, and we need to capitalize on this opportunity. It's up to all of us to rethink and reimagine how we address poverty and hunger in this country. We can't work around the edges any longer. We have to think differently and reimagine a better future, a more just and equitable society, one that invests in our kids and our families and gives them dignity and agency over their own lives. So there are three main things I think that we need to do moving forward. First, we need to make many of the expanded benefits from the American Rescue Plan permanent, especially SNAP and the child tax credit. And this week, I wrote to the White House making this argument ahead of President Biden's speech tonight, leading a letter from freshman members urging him to make a permanent investment in our kids. Second, we need to stop structuring programs like SNAP in a way that's designed to turn people away instead of giving them a hand. There are a number of bills, including the EATS Act, that I'm excited to be working with Mike on, which get at this problem. And as a member of the House Armed Services Committee, I'm also taking action to make sure that low-income service members can access SNAP and not have their basic housing allowance count against their eligibility. We know here in San Diego County alone, more than 39,000 members of military families visit the food bank every single month. So getting this done will be hugely impactful for us here in San Diego. And I gotta say, in my conversations with the White House, I am so heartened by what's going to be included in the American Families Plan, especially around school and childhood hunger, and that we have a president who is prioritizing this and making his first conversation to the joint session of Congress about this topic. Finally, as we confront these issues, we must always remember that this work isn't just about one particular benefit or some total on a spreadsheet. Expanding our social services and building a more just and equitable economy is about giving people dignity and agency. It's about building the future that we want for all of our kids. And I am so very grateful to be doing that work alongside all of you. So thank you again. I look forward to continuing this conversation, and please reach out if my office can ever be of assistance.
Thank you, Congresswoman Jacobs. I wish we were all in person because you would hear like such a great round of applause. We truly appreciate your time and all that you're doing to protect, preserve, and strengthen federal nutrition assistance programs to better meet the needs of San Diego County residents. Thank you very much for your time. So continuing with our schedule, I think it's now time for our breakout rooms. Our breakout room sessions, and I'll turn it over to Amanda.
Thanks, Mauricio. Yeah, I think, as you can see through the presentation from Anahid, our CEO, and then hearing from two remarkable members of Congress here representing San Diego County, there have just been incredible efforts to bring historical levels of nutrition and food assistance to San Diego County. And I think, you know, from all of us that are working on the ground, we know that there continues to be additional opportunity. And so, you know, as we come together in this new virtual setting, we wanted to create the opportunity for some of those more intimate conversations that we'd usually be having at our legislative forum. And so we're going to take the next 15 minutes to get together in regional breakout groups. And so we have done our very best based on registrations to assign individuals to breakout groups with staff and representatives from elected offices operating in those regions, as well as nonprofits that are addressing food security in the region. So that said, we'll have, I believe we have 7 different breakout groups. If for any reason you end up in a group that doesn't necessarily fit the region, a region that your community organization is serving, please feel free to exit the room and we'll work with you to make sure that you get reassigned to a room that fits your region. Otherwise, once you are in your room, please take a moment to introduce yourselves. Hopefully everyone will have a minute or two to introduce yourselves, the way that you've seen food insecurity impact your community, and then if you'd like to share a little bit about what your organization is currently doing to address food and nutrition insecurity. And this is just really a time for relationship building. So with that, I think I'm gonna check to Sara to see, are we close to, oh great, okay, perfect. Well, with that, I hope everyone enjoys conversations, and then we'll come back together and hear from some expert panelists. Thank you. I hope everyone had a nice opportunity to connect, network, build some relationships, and share both about the need that you've seen and the amazing work that's being done. We know that each area and community has different unique needs, and that the organizations that are in this room are also uniquely poised to serve the communities that they're working in. So yes, I hope that this was helpful, and that there are lots of great follow-up conversations that result through your time together. So at this point, we're actually going to shift gears. Let me make sure I have the right. So we are really lucky to be joined by three amazing leaders in the hunger relief sector today. As we think about the impact that food insecurity has across our region, we recognize that really food insecurity impacts us across the lifespan. And so, you know, the challenge ahead of us as we think about this year to come is really to build upon the lessons that we've been learning about how to create a stronger, more integrated food assistance resource system. And we're looking forward to having a conversation to that very end. So this morning, or excuse me, I guess that this afternoon now, you'll hear from three panelists. Our panelists are going to be sharing with us about their experiences within the organizations that they're working in on both the impact of food insecurity on a particular period in the life cycle, whether it's youth, adult, or older adults. They'll also be sharing about challenges that they've seen and opportunities that they see ahead as we come together as a sector to address food insecurity and nutrition insecurity. So I am actually I'll share just briefly our panelists, and then I'd love actually panelists, if you can just share a little bit about yourself before we get started. So the order that we're going to be sharing our panel in, we're joined today to talk about youth meals by Catherine Slomka, who is the Nutrition Service Director at Oceanside School District. She will be followed by Margarita Holguin, and Margarita, I believe you're the Director of Partnerships, but please correct me. We support you, and I also want to make a note that Margarita was previously the Executive Director at Chula Vista Community Collaborative and has worked very closely with Health and Human Service Agency before that. And then here to speak with us today about older adults is Melinda Forsty, who's the Chief Operations Officer with Serving Seniors. So it's my pleasure to start this panel this morning with Catherine Slomka, Nutrition Service Director of Oceanside School District.
Hi, thank you so much for having me and be a part of these conversations. So as Amanda said, I'm the Director of Nutrition Services here in Oceanside. I am celebrating my 5th year actually this week here in the district. I started off as the dietitian for the district, and I became the director just in August. So it's been quite a whirlwind for us here. We have a pretty high free and reduced percentage here in Oceanside. We are about 65% of our students qualify for free and reduced price meals. So we have a really high need here in our district. There's a lot of food insecurity, and we've seen throughout the past year and a half, quite an impact with COVID. And our students and our community here in Oceanside, because of the flexibilities and waivers, we have been able to expand our food services to all of the children here in Oceanside. So we've been very, very busy. We have done the best that we can given our circumstances to reach as many students and children in Oceanside as possible. We serve in a lot of different models across our school campuses, especially now, as I was just talking, in our breakout rooms, because we have so many different schedules going on, and the need for food is not changing. Our participation is pretty overwhelming. We seem to run out of food almost every week, especially because on Mondays, we offer grocery bags, so fresh grocery bags that we're able to now give bulk food, and that has been so well received by our community. We've been able to use DoD funds so that we can afford it. And it's been really amazing to be able to give fresh avocados and strawberries and, a dozen eggs and things like that to our community. So some of the challenges that we have faced and that we continue to face are really just reaching students right now with virtual learning, hybrid learning. Parents at home, some parents are full working. It's difficult to get food into the hands of kids. So we're serving curbside, we're serving on campus if they come to campus. We serve at 2 bus stops on Camp Pendleton, and we are serving at 3 community parks, as well as I mentioned, all of our 22 school campuses. And the challenges that we have faced, besides reaching students, is storage. Storing food during this time is very difficult. Having enough storage for freshly prepared meals has been challenging. We are fortunate here in Oceanside to have a central warehouse, but the storage for refrigeration is actually not as good as you might think it is. And now that we serve all meals grab and go, so things have to be prepared and then put in bags and then stored. So then once our sites prepare these bags, there's really nowhere for them to go because we only have limited storage at our school sites. We've been, applying for every grant possible to buy more milk coolers and refrigeration for our school sites, and leaning on our partners and asking for, we were able to get a trailer donated to us from Gold Star Foods. Well, not donated, but lended to us. And we only had to pay for fuel. So that was really awesome. And that gave us the ability to bring in more fresh fruits and vegetables that we wouldn't normally be able to store at our school sites. It's really exciting to hear about conversations for military families to be directly certified. That is a challenge that we have under normal circumstances. We have 3 schools on Camp Pendleton, and because housing allowance has to be included in the income of the families, that really eliminates a lot of our military families from being able to participate and receive free lunches. So that would be an amazing move in legislation if we were able to offer meals at no cost to all of our military kiddos. So that would be really amazing. And then I'll just share quickly. We have just the positive things that we've seen amongst these challenging times is that we've been really fortunate to experience such success in being able to serve kids. We have been really excited of the new partnerships that we have created. One of those being with our transportation department here in Oceanside. really working with our transportation to put food on school buses if ever possible. And then leaning on our support and community partners like San Diego Hunger Coalition and San Diego Food Bank, and just really working collaboratively because we're all on the same team. And then if and when we do need to work on food recovery, I have phone number of a couple local organizations where we can donate food, because as like most districts are experiencing this influx of participation, this kind of feast or famine, no pun intended, and we might end up with a lot of extra food at the end of the day. And we want to make sure that that's going home to families in need. Even if we can't be reimbursed for it, we'd rather go to families rather than in the trash can, of course. So we've been working with local organizations to promote food recovery. So those new partnerships as a result of our circumstances have been really cool to be a part of, and ones that I see existing beyond COVID. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We really appreciate your leadership. I know as we think about all of the amazing work that Oceanside School District has done, I think you really serve as a model for districts across San Diego County, California, and the nation. So we just greatly appreciate your leadership and your commitment to ensuring that our kids are getting as many meals as possible, especially during this difficult time. So I know Catherine doesn't, you tend to be a more humble person from my experience, having been able to work together. And so, yeah, Catherine, I think is, just really pushing the needle as far as being able to quickly transition meal services and ensure that those families who may be struggling to access resources are able to do so in ways that are convenient and dignified. So we just really greatly appreciate hearing from you and are excited to continue to elevate the work that you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Margarita Holguin, who is the Director of Partnership Initiatives. We support you, and just so grateful. Margarita has been a longtime champion of food security in her work, both supporting community residents and promotores, and has led some really innovative collaborations between communities and local government with our Health and Human Service Agency. And so thank you so much for speaking with us today, Margarita.
Certainly. Thank you, Amanda, for inviting me. And I know just mentioning that one of my role is also as the founding chair and the current co-chair of the San Diego County Promotores Coalition. So really looking at advancing the work of community health workers and promotores, so we know are the bridge to get the information out and to bring people into services. So that certainly, I'll mention that when we talk about some of the opportunities. But in sharing the work that we've done, we know that food insecurity is a condition. It's a condition in which someone or a family or an individual doesn't have access to adequate food. And so it's very much a social and economic condition, which means that it's affected by social determinants of health. And so we continue to talk about the health of the population and how we want to increase health and make sure that there are no health disparities, but yet we make programs that specifically hinder people in those social determinants of health. So the impact of the population is just huge. It's a negative and profound effect on the population of the families we're trying to assist. What we would see in the programs that I've been working with and that I continue to hear from the promotoras is the level of anxiety, the stress, and then all that turns into depression. Obesity is such an issue, this sense of hopelessness. Just imagine being an adult here in San Diego County, a mom perhaps. You're working, you may not have a college degree, and you're making $20 an hour. have you guys paid your rent lately? Do you know how difficult it is to live in San Diego County with how much rents are? Everything is just very expensive. So how can that mom provide for her 2 young children? And she's trying, and she doesn't want to be on public aid, and she's just giving it her best, and she just can't do it. Why? Because we as a society just kind of say things that we don't really mean by saying we want everyone to be healthy and to have an opportunity and achieve the dream. So I saw that a lot in the families that we saw as that impact. And then think of that person where she's at that $20 an hour job. How can she be productive and get promoted because of all the work that she does when she's thinking of her children? She's thinking of how she's going to pay the rent. She's thinking of how they're going to have food. And right now with families having their children at home, I remember having teenagers at home and how much they can eat. So before, at least they would get some meals at school. Now they're home, they're eating all the time. And so it's been such an impact for our families. So again, is that social determinants of health issue. We already know there's so much evidence out there that shows that there's such an increased risk for mental health issues. There's increased rates of diabetes, of hypertension, and so many other health issues that are associated with food insecurity. It is a lifelong issue if we don't try and really work to address some of those needs within our families. I was reading that about 1 in 4 people in California are food insecure. That's a lot of people. There's 28 of us here. That could mean 6 of us could be food insecure. That's a very high statistic. And so who is food insecure? It's the families that are already impacted. It's those brown and Black communities, those communities that we as social service providers are already challenged to provide services, to engage them in services, and to provide them sufficient services to meet all their multiple needs. So those are the communities that are mostly impacted. The communities, the low-income communities, and again, Black and brown communities. So it just adds to the issues that they have. One thing that we saw through the work that we've been doing with community health workers and through the network of family research centers that I oversaw with the Chula Vista Community Collaborative was that we spent years telling people, you can trust us. It's okay to ask for services. It's okay to come into a center or to call a number and to say, I need help. We would say that over and over. It's okay. We'll build trust. We're there for you. We know this is good. And then all that just went away with our last few years. It just went away, and people again were afraid, were labeled, were told you're a public charge, were told you're not welcome, it's not okay. And so what does anyone do when that is the message that you get? You retreat, right? You go away, you withdraw into your own issues. And so we had people coming in to say to us, can you please help me get off of CalFresh? Can you help me make sure I submit the paperwork and say I don't want assistance anymore, which was sad because they still had the need, but they just didn't want to be on services because of the labels we placed. When we look at challenges, we also look at is just so unaffordable to live in San Diego. And again, if you have an adult who works 40 hours a week, makes $20 an hour, potentially could be ineligible to CalFresh, but can they really afford it? Can they afford to eat? No. And so if you have to pay rent and you have to pay utilities and you have to pay food, well, guess what? You have to pay rent because you're going to get evicted. You're going to have to pay utilities because they can get shut off. So where do you not spend money? In food. So it's really about looking at all the challenges that we already place in people. And so we do have some opportunities. We have great organizations, a great network of organizations in San Diego that really looks to connect families to services. We have agencies that are providing food bags and staples, but that's not enough. That's a Band-Aid. So it's really working on advocating for this program as an entitlement program. It should be a right for people to be able to eat healthy and nutritious food. The other thing is really investing in outreach programs. in making sure we go to those communities and let them know that it's okay to receive services. It's okay to need help, that there's so much more out there for them, and that we're there to support them. It's really being able to eat sufficient food that is healthy and nutritious is not a luxury. It should be a basic human right for every American in San Diego. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Margarita. I truly appreciate you tying the work that we're doing at a systemic level back to very tangible experiences that so many of our San Diegan neighbors are experiencing, and the very specific challenges and in decision making around how the types of things that we're able to purchase. And I also really appreciate what you just shared about our communities that have recently been labeled public charge over the last 4 years with our last administration, and just all of the rebuilding that is in front of us, and rebuilding those critical networks of trust and relationships. And I think recently in work that we were doing around the pandemic ABT program, we heard from some organizations that are engaging community health workers with Margarita and the San Diego Promotores Coalition, that in some cases their individuals would need to have at least 5 contacts with the same organization before they were willing to access resources and benefits. And so the amount of time and the resources that we all need to invest as a group to help individuals feel comfortable accessing these resources is really significant. So thank you so much for shining light on both the work to be done and the amazing opportunities in this network of community health workers that we have across the region. So at this point, I'm going to continue the conversation, as we look across the life cycle. And would like to invite Melinda Forsty, the Chief Operation Officer at Serving Seniors, to share with us some of the perspectives on the work that they're doing to ensure that older adults across San Diego County are accessing healthy, nutritious foods.
Great. Well, thank you, Amanda, and I'm really excited to be here today. So I've been with the organization for over 11 years now, and Serving Seniors is a nonprofit that provides nutrition, but also housing, social services, nursing, and classes and activities to seniors throughout the entire county. We are focused on low-income seniors and providing for those most in need. I think it may be helpful to paint a little bit of the landscape of the senior population. So older adults are the fastest growing demographic, and 10,000 Americans turn 65 every single day. To put that a little bit more in perspective, the older adult population in San Diego is, I believe, at like 670,000 right now, and is projected to just be under 1 million by 2030. So in addition to, the fast growing pace of this population, seniors today are very different than seniors were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Many more seniors are experiencing economic hardship, and more seniors are living alone, and fewer have less familial support. So they really don't have that built-in support that previous generations had. According to UCLA, they do use a economic indicator called the Elder Index. And through that indicator, 2 out of 5 seniors in San Diego are struggling to make ends meet. So they have to choose between rent, food, healthcare, transportation, and other basic needs. So if you look at what that means, by the year 2030, that's going to be nearly 400,000 seniors just in our county alone that are struggling. As Margarita mentioned, seniors experiencing food insecurity face a myriad of issues. They're more at risk for chronic health conditions such as hypertension, diabetes, and asthma. And Margarita also touched upon the psychological and mental health impacts of that as well. One statistic I found that was really stunning to me was that food insecure seniors are 233% more likely to experience depression. So that is just an astounding number. And relating that back to our experience with seniors in the community, prior to the pandemic, we were providing 650,000 meals to about 5,000 seniors through both congregate dining sites such as senior centers, but also through our home delivered meals program. Last year, during the pandemic, that increased to almost 1 million. And this year we're on track to serve 1.7 million meals. So more and more seniors now are accessing our services, which is great. But that just shows the need for continued advocacy and funding as well. I think it's also critical to point out that, I know within this network, we're all focused on hunger and nutrition, but so many of us do more than that as well, and really maybe the entry point for our clients to access other resources, such as housing, employment, and transportation. One of the things that we've also identified over the last year, and which of course has been highlighted, I'm sure you've all heard it on the news, is the social isolation that all folks have experienced, but particularly with seniors. And social isolation can actually be worse for health than, I believe it's smoking, the equivalent of smoking 7 cigarettes a day. So I think it's critical that as a community, we come together and continue with that advocacy, and not just, again, to provide those nutrition services, to really look at the whole person needs of those that we're serving as well. I do think there's some great opportunities out there. The need has been highlighted for all populations across the board. There's been great support at all levels of government to increase funding. And I think, again, it's just critical that we are the voice for those that we serve. And so with that, I'll take a pause and pass that back over to Amanda.
Thank you so much, Melinda. We really appreciate your expertise. And I think, one thing that a lot of individuals in the room may not know is Serving Seniors is not only a leader on food security for older adults in San Diego County, but nationally. And so we really appreciate all of the work that your organization is doing to ensure that additional resources are coming to San Diego County. And I think as the Hunger Advocacy Network, we'd love to further partner and support that work as, as to your really important and startling point that we're just going to continue to see more and more older adults in our community that are going to be struggling with nutrition and food security. And so how do we as a community come together to identify and continue to bring in additional resources to meet those needs, I think is an area that we can all work towards together. So thank you again for being with us this afternoon. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Mauricio Medina, our Public Affairs Manager. I'll just share, really briefly, the Hunger Advocacy Network as a network comes together every year, and we take a look at the legislation that's being proposed both at the state and federal level and identify a couple of key priority areas that we can work together towards advancing resources and ultimately food security for our region. And so we greatly appreciate the members that are a part of this network, your perspectives and your commitment to working together to advance these efforts. This year we went through a similar prioritization process, which Mauricio is going to share the areas that we as a network are really working hard to ensure that all of our members in office are aware of, that we really see as critical to bringing food and nutrition security to our region.
Thank you, Amanda, for that introduction. So I would like to start at the federal level, if that's okay. And I'm going to wait. I think Amanda's pulling up the screen. So cool. So at the federal level, HR 1753, the able-bodied adults without dependents. This would repeal the particular work requirement that disqualifies able-bodied adults for eligibility to participate in the SNAP program. Moving along to HR 3378, summer EBT. This would build upon the success of the pandemic EDP to extend summer meals to all children throughout summer through the summer EBT. And with HR 4684, the Universal Free Meals Program Act, this would make sure that all children are fed through the Universal Free Meals Program. HR 1919, the EATS Act, I think Congresswoman Jacobs alluded to this in her keynote address, but this would provide a permanent fix for college hunger by treating attendance at an institution of higher education the same as work for the purpose of determining SNAP eligibility. And HR 8554, I think Congressman Levin touched on this. This is the Support the Military Dependent School Meal Eligibility Act. And this bill would create direct certification of military children for free or reduced price school meals. Next slide, please. And these are HAN's state priorities. SB 107, the simplified CalFresh application for adults in telephonic signature. This bill would require the California Department of Social Services to develop a streamlined, user-centered CalFresh application for older adults, those 60 years of age and older, and for people with disabilities. This bill would also expand the opportunity for individuals to complete the full CalFresh application and renewal process, including the signing of verification documents over the phone. Moving along, SB 346, Senate Bill 364, sorry for that, aims to end childhood hunger in California by 1, establishing the California Universal School Meal Program that will allow free breakfasts and lunches to all children, and 2, to establish the Better Out of School Boost Nutrition Program to provide EBT cards during school breaks or closures during disasters. In Senate Bill 464, this bill would expand California food assistance eligibility to anyone excluded from CalFresh solely due to their immigration status. This includes undocumented immigrants, DACA recipients, temporary protected status holders, and certain visa holders. In AB 221, emergency food assistance, and similar to SB 464, AB 221 would provide emergency food assistance to immigrants adversely affected by COVID-19 and excluded from federal aid because of their immigration status in the form of a prepaid electronic card preloaded with $600 to purchase food. This bill would also require the State Department of Social Services to provide recommendations for a permanent food assistance program. This differs from Senate Bill 464 in that this would be immediate, and Senate Bill 464 would kick in a couple of years. So yeah, those are the legislation that Han chose to prioritize, and please be on the lookout for regularly scheduled emails to the Han Network that will provide updates on the bills as they move forward in the legislative process. And yeah, I think I'd like to now turn it over to Dana Henderson, our second Han co-chair, who will give us some final thoughts and wrap up.
Can I sorry, before you close us out, I just wanted to note for any members of elected offices that are interested in these bills, particularly SB 107 and SB 464, that the sponsor organization for both of those bills is a member of Han. So Nourish California, just wanted to acknowledge, I believe Angeles is on in the meeting with us today, and maybe she can put her contact information in the chat. But if you have really specific questions about how that bill is operating, you know, we're always happy to answer questions, and also want to acknowledge that the sponsors are with us today. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda and Mauricio, and to the panelists for your presentations. As everyone can see, there's a lot of great work happening in our region, and there's still a lot to be done. So my name is Dana Henderson. I'm one of the co-chairs of HAN, and I'm the director of programs at Feeding San Diego, a local hunger relief organization. And before we wrap up, I wanted to share with everyone some opportunities to stay engaged and involved, as you can see here on the slide. One is to participate in HAN's calls to action. So as the legislative session moves forward, there'll be plenty of opportunities to stay engaged with HAN calls to action. This could include taking part in legislative visits, providing public testimony, or submitting letters of support on behalf of a specific piece of legislation. So Mauricio will send an email on specifics as calls to action opportunities become available. So please be on the lookout for those. So thank you again for everyone being here today. As we learned from all of our speakers, there has never been a more critical time for us to focus our time, energy, and resources towards ensuring that every San Diego County resident has enough healthy food to eat. Thank you and have a great rest of your day.